There is a town in Pennsylvania where the disaster is not above the ground, it is underneath it. For more than 60 years, Centralia has been burning from below, and the fire may continue long after everyone who remembers the town is gone. To understand why Centralia became famous, you have to understand what it was before the fire. It was not built as a tourist attraction or a ghost story. It was a real mining town in the anthracite coal region of Pennsylvania. People worked, shopped, prayed, raised children, and buried relatives there. The town existed because of coal, and for decades coal shaped almost every part of life around it. Anthracite coal is hard, dense, and valuable. In the 19th and 20th centuries, mines spread under towns across the region. Shafts, tunnels, and old workings formed a hidden world below ordinary streets. When mines were active, people knew they were there. But after many mines closed, those underground spaces did not disappear. They remained under the land, sometimes poorly mapped, sometimes connected in ways later engineers could not fully trace. Centralia's disaster is usually dated to May of 1962. A fire began near the town dump. The exact details are still argued over, but the common account is that trash was burned in or near an old strip mine pit, and the flames reached an opening connected to abandoned mine workings. Once fire entered the coal seam, the problem changed completely. It was no longer a surface fire that could simply be soaked and buried. It had reached fuel that stretched underground. At first, the danger did not look like the end of a town. Local crews tried to put it out. Trenches were dug. Water was used. Different plans were discussed to cut off the oxygen or isolate the burning coal. But underground coal fires are difficult because they do not behave like campfires or house fires. They can move through cracks, mine voids, and old tunnels. They can draw air from one place and release smoke somewhere else. A spot may look calm while heat keeps moving below it. The fire also had the perfect environment to survive. It had fuel in the coal. It had oxygen through old mine openings and fractured ground. And it had room to spread through abandoned workings. Even when one area seemed controlled, another could heat up. Some plans failed because the fire had already moved farther than expected. Other plans were too expensive or too uncertain to continue. Through the 1960s and 1970s, Centralia remained occupied. That is one of the strangest parts of the story. The town did not instantly empty. People kept living above the fire. Children still walked through neighborhoods. Families still used the roads. But the warning signs became harder to ignore. Steam rose from the ground in cold weather. Smoke appeared from cracks. The soil became hot in places. Bad smells drifted through parts of town. Carbon monoxide, an invisible gas that can kill without warning, became a serious concern. Carbon monoxide made the fire especially frightening. Smoke is visible. Flames are visible. But carbon monoxide can enter low areas, basements, or pockets near the ground without looking dramatic. A person might not see danger until symptoms begin. That meant Centralia was not just dealing with heat underground. It was dealing with air that could become unsafe above it. Then came the incident that changed the public image of the town. In 1981, a 12-year-old boy named Todd Domboski was in his grandmother's backyard when the ground suddenly opened under him. He fell into a hot, steaming hole. Reports described the opening as only a few feet wide, but deep enough and dangerous enough that he could not simply climb out safely. His cousin pulled him out before the gases could overcome him. That moment became a symbol of Centralia. It showed that the fire was not just an engineering problem hidden below old mines. It could break through into everyday life. A backyard could become a hazard. Ground that looked solid could fail. For people outside Centralia, the image was shocking. A child nearly swallowed by a hole caused by an underground fire. Government attention increased. Engineers and officials studied the fire and the town's safety. The conclusions were bleak. Extinguishing the fire completely would be extremely expensive, and success was not guaranteed. Some estimates suggested that if left alone, the fire could burn for centuries. The exact future path of the fire was uncertain, but the risk to residents was clear enough that relocation became the main solution. In the 1980s, the federal government approved money to move people out. Families were offered buyouts. Many accepted because the choice was not simple. Leaving meant giving up homes, memories, neighbors, and a place where generations had lived. Staying meant living above a fire that could release gas, crack roads, damage land, and possibly open holes without warning. As people left, Centralia began to vanish in a way that looked almost unnatural. Houses were purchased, emptied, and demolished. Lots returned to grass. Streets that once led to rows of homes began to lead nowhere. A community was not destroyed in a single explosion or flood. It was slowly erased, parcel by parcel, because the ground underneath it could no longer be trusted. Even after relocation, not everyone agreed to leave. Some residents believed the danger was exaggerated or felt that the government had mishandled the situation. Others simply did not want to abandon their home. Years of legal battles followed. Eventually, a small number of remaining residents were allowed to stay for the rest of their lives, but the town around them had already been reduced to a shadow of what it once was. Centralia also became famous because of a road. A section of old highway near the town cracked and buckled as heat and ground movement damaged it. Smoke and steam sometimes rose from the pavement. Visitors began coming to see it, photograph it, and later cover it with graffiti. For a while, the road became one of the most recognizable images of Centralia, but the road also showed a problem with how people treated the town. To visitors, it could look like an eerie attraction. To officials, it was unstable land over an active underground fire. What looked like a strange photo spot was still part of a dangerous environment. Eventually, authorities covered much of the graffiti highway with dirt to discourage visitors from walking on it and treating the danger like entertainment. What makes Centralia so unsettling is that the disaster is quiet. There is no towering flame at the center of town, no constant explosion, no single dramatic crater that explains everything. In many places, you see empty streets, trees, grass, cemeteries, and open land. The danger is mostly invisible. It is heat, gas, and fire moving through the mine system below. That quietness is why Centralia is more than a ghost story. It is also an environmental story. Underground coal fires can waste enormous amounts of fuel, release toxic gases, damage landscapes, and make land unsafe for generations. Similar fires have burned in other parts of the world, including mining regions in China, India, Australia, and elsewhere. Centralia became famous because the fire did not stay separate from human life. It forced a town to disappear. The science behind the fire is simple enough to understand, but almost impossible to solve once it spreads. Coal burns when it has heat, fuel, and oxygen. Underground, those conditions can remain in pockets and tunnels. If engineers cannot cut off the oxygen or remove the burning coal completely, the fire may keep moving. Water can cool some areas, but it may not reach the full burning seam. Digging can expose new air pathways. Sealing one section may not seal all of them. That is why early attempts failed. The fire was not one neat flame in one known chamber. It was part of a complicated mine network. Once it spread, every solution became more expensive and less certain. By the time the danger was widely recognized, Centralia had become a case where relocation was more realistic than extinguishing the underground fire. The human side of the story is easy to overlook. Centralia was not abandoned by people who simply got bored and left. Many residents were forced into a painful decision. Some believed leaving was necessary, some felt pressured. Some saw their town portrayed as a curiosity while their actual community was being dismantled. The empty spaces there are not just scenery. They mark where homes, shops, and neighborhoods used to be. Cemeteries remain among the most powerful reminders of the old town. They showed that Centralia was not just a place on a map. It was a community with history, families, and roots. Around them, much of the town is gone, but the dead remain where the living were told to leave. Today, Centralia still exists legally, but only barely. Its population is tiny compared with what it once was. Many streets are empty. Much of the land has been cleared. Smoke and steam can still appear from vents and cracks depending on conditions. The fire below continues to define the place more than any building above it. The most disturbing part is that the fire does not need human attention to continue. It does not require someone to feed it every day. The coal underground is already fuel. The old mines and fractures can provide air. As long as those conditions remain, the fire can keep burning slowly under land that may look calm from the surface. Centralia became a warning because it shows how a local problem can become a generational disaster. A small fire near a dump reached an old mine system, and the result was not a few damaged buildings. It was the slow disappearance of a town. It was a reminder that what humans dig out of the earth can leave dangers behind long after the industry has faded. The story also explains why old industrial landscapes can be difficult to repair. A closed mine is not always finished just because the last shift ended. Shafts can collapse. Tunnels can fill with gas. Water can move through old workings. Fires can find paths that no one remembers. Centralia became one of the clearest examples of how the past can remain physically active under the present. That is why the town still attracts attention decades later. People are drawn to the image of smoke rising from empty ground, but the real lesson is bigger than the smoke. Centralia shows what happens when a hidden system under a town becomes more powerful than the town itself. Roads, houses, and maps can be changed. The fire below is much harder to command. And that is why Centralia still feels so strange. It is not haunted because of legends. It is haunted by infrastructure, coal, heat, gas, and decisions made over decades. The town is mostly gone, but beneath it, the thing that erased it is still there, still burning and still waiting under the ground.